Hello, everybody. This is the host, Final Man Jebb, of the Jebb and Green podcast, and also special episode going to Unlikely Places Pop and Rock Radio. Check the description for details on how we're doing this, but doing a double show feature with Tino Troy of Praying Mantis. How are you, Tino?
Yo, I'm great, thank you. Had a few beers on a Sunday afternoon, so
There you
it's a
go.
great. I'm in the mood.
In the mood for the podcast. Perfect.
Yeah,
Rock and roll life.
yeah. I
So
don't
we'll
know
start
about
right away. We'll,
that.
we'll start right away. First question for you. Get everything started. Ask everybody on this show. Musical influence. What got you into music?
Oh, well, I mean, my parents' European background. I had Spanish music behind me, Greek music when I
Oh,
was
wow.
growing up on my father's side. So mother Spanish, father Greek, and just all those European sounds as well, and the sort of like Eastern, more sort of leading towards the Eastern sound, and the Greek element gave us a real sort of a grounding for the sort of music we actually came about with. So you'll hear a lot of these melodies coming out, a lot of these Mediterranean melodies coming out in our music. So yeah, I mean, there were the very early influences, apart from listening to the Beatles and stuff like that when I was young, and then Status Quo, Pictures of Matchstick Men, I first heard was one of the very first songs I really got into, and Status Quo became like a real part of my life in
Fantastic
when I
psych
started
band.
learning playing guitars. Yeah,
Fantastic psych band.
yeah. So I
So,
mean, yeah, many other influences, but I can't sort of name any particular one. But I mean, at the time, I was a very late developer in the way guitarists sort of come to fruition. I mean, I didn't start playing guitar till I was 16 years old, and
ah,
I actually made my first guitar at school, my
oh,
last
wow.
year at high school. So and that sort of got me the impetus to carry on and do stuff. But I just locked myself away in my room for bedroom, sometimes rehearsing for 8 hours, 10 hours a day, until I become really accomplished. And many people had thought I'd been playing for years and years. I'd only been playing for about 2 years and became quite accomplished within 2 years. So I caught up with
Hmm.
not starting from a very young age, put it that way.
That's amazing. You listen to the Praying Mantis stuff. It's like you've probably been playing since you were like 12, Because
Yeah, in the
it feels
womb.
like that. Definitely feels like that.
Ah,
Oh, that's
thanks, dude.
awesome. And you also play keyboards, correct?
Play keyboards, yeah, but not great. I mean, I use it
Hmm.
basically as a writing tool, as does Chris, my brother,
Ah,
as does
cool.
Andy, the other guitar player. We all use keyboards for. It's actually easier when you've got those 12 same notes all the way up the keyboard. You can actually well, I say 8 notes, but I mean with the sharps and the flats 12.
Hmm.
And you've got those octaves, and you can sort of like try something different on the bass end of stuff, which you can't readily do on guitar. So it's great. It's a great writing tool in that capacity because I mean a different bass note can change the whole inflection of a chord, and it's wow, this is new to me.
It actually opens up the mind, for more
It
songwriting
does,
too.
it
Yeah.
does, but now I'm starting to write more on guitar again, and
Well, there
which
you
is
go.
great. Yeah. So,
How long have you been songwriting for? I know you write most of the songs
oh,
for Mantis as well, right?
Chris and myself, yeah,
Oh,
we write
cool.
most of the songs, but nowadays, in the last 5 years or so, six
Hmm.
years, um, the whole band have collectively been writing together, so
Oh,
which is
cool.
which is a great thing, because it brings a whole different sort of element to the band. It's just like a different side of things, brings a certain songwriting element because if you sort of just like chose Chris and me to write the songs, we'd probably still be down that same avenue, whereas we can branch off into sort of maybe four different directions now, which is great. And from sort of being branded as a new wave of British heavy metal for so long, now
Hmm.
we've got more of an AOR thing and more of a rock thing as well. That's so I started off with the influences of, like I said, Status Quo. Then it became Thin Lizzy because I love the twin guitars on that, and Wishbone Ash as well, which they did the twin
Phew.
guitars, but they also had
Great
the
bands.
yeah, brilliant, and they had Wishbone Ash had the added element of the big vocal harmonies as well, which we grasped hold of, and yes, let's have some of this
Yeah, I
and
love
incorporate that into
the
Mantis.
melodics.
Yeah,
I love
that's right.
it.
Love it.
So, what made you guys come up with the band name Praying Mantis? Like,
I
what
don't.
what was the story behind that? Because it's an amazing, amazing band name and just an amazing creature.
It's,
Insane.
it's funny enough. Everyone sort of like just everyone says like Praying Mantis, Praying Mantis. Like that sounds really like a really heavy metal name, and
Yeah.
we're sort of just actually recruiting a whole bunch of fans now. They're going, we didn't realize you were so like sort of open. You know, your whole music element is not heavy metal at all.
Yeah.
It's more melodic, and but the name sort of conjures up that thing.
Hmm.
But I'll tell you how the name started anyway, and it's actually in a book by I think it's Blair Gibson, and it's called What's in a Name. A Canadian guy, and what's in a name? And he's like sort of contacted every band, you know, in the heavy metal sphere, and said, "How did you get your name?" Basically. So, I mean, if anyone wants to sort of buy that book, I'm not sort of promoting it or anything. It's not even my
Yeah, I
book. I'm
get
not
some.
getting any royalties. But it's quite interesting, and it started off when we in our first days of recording as a. I mean, basically, I went to college, the College of London College of Furniture, and I studied furniture design there. And unbeknown to me, there was this department on the third floor. That's a musical instrument department. I thought I made musical instruments. They were making electric guitars, man. I was just like,
Ooh.
oh, in heaven. And so was Pete, my other mate, and both Quo fans at the time as well, and Lizzie fans. So we got together and formed a band at college. And Chris, at the time, he didn't know what a bass guitar was. He was playing my brother. This is Chris, my brother.
Yeah.
He's the bass player, and he was playing. He was having lessons doing Spanish guitar, classical guitar,
Oh.
and I got really jealous of all this because like the family used to come around Easter time and Christmas time, and he'd play little concertos to them. You know, come on, Chris, come on, come out and play. And everybody was getting clapped, and I was getting that really red faced and jealous. I'm going to do something about this. And so I locked myself away in my room with my guitar, and I practiced and practiced and practiced until the day came, like a few years later when I was at college, and I said to Chris, "Do you fancy playing bass?" He goes, "What's bass?" What is bass? And what I did is the first guitar I ever built at high school, I converted to a bass guitar, and the first song we ever did together, Pete Moore, the other guitarist I formed the band with, which was then called Junction at college. We
Oh.
decided to call it Junction, and I said to Chris, "Do you fancy joining me?" Because yeah, all right then. So you know, I changed this guitar into a bass, and the first song we actually did together was Caroline by Status Quo, and it was just like great because it was just like a 12 bar, you know, blues,
Ooh.
and just set and pedaling on straight eights on the bass, and it's very easy for Chris to pick up. But you know, because he had this grounding of the melody from the Spanish guitar thing that he was doing, he came up with this little riff, and I can remember it to this day with dum 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 dum, and this so it became our own first writing.
Hell
We
yeah.
I wrote some lyrics to it, and it became a song called Night Child. We've got to do that one day. Actually, we've just never seen the light of day as since then, you know. So and what's in the name? I'm diversing. I'm
That's all good.
diversifying.
We got tons of
So
time.
yeah, no, I love it. I love it. Yeah, I mean, this brings it all back. You know, when people ask questions like this, and I'm
Yeah.
going, "Wow, this is great," and I start writing it down, and suddenly there's a book there. You know, I can write a book. I can write a book. So anyway, so the name came from we met this other guy at college while we were there called Stanley Cunningham, and he was from up north, from the up north of England, from Cumbria, in fact. And I heard him singing one day in college, and he had a great voice. And I said to Pete, both Pete and me looked at each other, and I said, "Wow, he's got." Shall we ask him? Yeah. So we asked him if he was interested. Yeah, I'll do some stuff for you guys. And so he came into the band, and he wrote some great lyrics. Actually, in fact, he wrote the lyrics to "Captured City."
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah, I have the Metal
and
for Mothers
but we lost
compilation with that on
that
there.
things. We lost touch with him, and
Ah.
to this day as well, we haven't had managed to make contact with him because you know, so obviously he's part of the sort of songwriting on that, but you
Hmm.
know, otherwise it just like sits in a pot for your publishing to take and PRS to take, and he doesn't see any of that money. So I said, "Well, you're to tap me on the shoulder, but not that it's going to be not that it's going to be much much dollars to get."
Yeah.
Yeah, but let's see. So anyway, our first embarkation into recording came with the old two old cassette recorders, the old Philips ones. Remember the
Ooh.
ones you had a little T bar at the bottom, and you used to like rewound to the left,
Yeah.
forwarded to the right, up, and then you press the button to record, and then you go up and press the thing up, the T bar up, and then you were recording. And our first experience of this was a broom standing up on end with a hammer tied to the bottom and the old cassette recorder mic taped to the top of the broom. and and we'd like start recording like that. And when we wanted to bounce, we sort of like bounce from one cassette to the other, and then again. So you get this generation loss, all the time. But I mean, in those days, it was fun and experimental. And Stan was singing along to this song that we'd recorded, this backing track, and this wasn't Captain City, by the way. It was a song called Destitute.
Oh.
I know it's all coming back, and um, and we started doing these backing vocals in the background. He was actually on the mic practically. I mean, without it being distorted, because those things would distort like crazy. And we were like Pete and myself were in the background singing away, sort of doing these shoo up. But as we were doing it, we were doing all these hand gestures, and he said, "You two guys look like a couple of praying mantis." And then we
Oh.
just looked at each other. And we went, "Wow, that's a great name for a band, that and Praying Mantis." And Praying Mantis was born from
Wow.
Junction. Praying Mantis became a hit with a song. Yeah,
Yeah, it seems to have stuck with you this long.
yeah, yeah.
And
But so, like I said, sometimes we think that sort of name sort of ties us down a little bit, grounds us to to
mhm.
to actually, because it does imply heavy metal, and those old covers that Rodney
Yeah.
Matthews did with us, that was very metal cover, wasn't it? Or at least progressive. I mean, it sort of like ventured on
Kind of
from
like
the.
Magnum's covers too. The
Yes,
same
that's right. He did
style.
the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Even like the early
yeah,
Maiden too. Like the
same
early.
artist. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
I
Yeah.
was just about to ask who did the covers for you guys too, so that was perfect to answer that one there for you.
Yeah, no,
For
Rodney
there.
Matthews we're still mates. In fact, we did an acoustic performance for him last year
Oh
because he
wow.
he remarried. His wife, poor thing, she died of the big C, and
Oh jeez.
he was in down in the dumps for a long time. But then he met this young lady, and she turned him around, and she's bringing out his whole repertoire that he's ever done. And they had an exhibition last year, and they invited us to play this unplugged thing at their show at their exhibition, and many paintings were sold by himself, and
There you go.
yeah, and it was great. So yeah, we're still very much in touch, and in fact, we're not sure whether we're going to do the next album with him yet or not. It may be a good ploy because we're actually destined to release an album next year,
Ooh,
and
I'm ready for that.
and this will be 40 years since Time Tells No Lies was first released.
There we go.
So yeah, it's quite a timely thing, and he did the artwork on that original album. So yeah,
That's amazing. And I love my dad was telling me the story of when he remembers going into the record store and seeing that cover. He goes, "I don't care what this sounds like, I'm buying it." And
yeah,
he was in that time where he was into all the early Maiden and all the time where like that Metal from Others comp with Captured City on there too and
yeah,
Sanctuary from Maiden, and he just got
excellent.
into all that stuff and he was like, "There's something about this band." And then you guys cover of the Kinks there, All Day and All the
Yeah,
Night there, which is a really cool cover, really cool thing. And he was like, "This is really cool." So you
well,
got into it.
yeah,
But my next question is, who's the singer on that album? Is that you or
um,
Chris?
three of us actually. There was
Oh wow.
yeah, I sang as you say all day and all of the night.
Oh, okay.
Beads of Ebony and Flirting with Suicide and another one I think I
Okay.
can't remember. Chris sang and Panic in the Streets. That's right.
Ah.
Then Chris sang. He sang. What would he sing? Like Children of the Earth
Oh, okay.
and I can't remember. Beads of Ebony. Yeah. No, he sang Beads of Ebony. Chris Best sang Beads of Ebony. Yeah,
Oh,
and
okay.
and Steve sang "Cheated" and "Running for Tomorrow," and I can't remember if
And
what
they're
I've
all
missed.
fantastic
But
songs. Guys, check out. We'll link the album down below. Check it out.
thank
One of
you.
the fantastic "Time Tells No Lies" is iconic as much as I saw the early metal. There was like a whole documentary series, and it had touched upon the tents at the metal fest, like the first metal fest, and there you guys are. And I'm like, can we touch more on Praying Mantis? They're one of my favorite bands. Like, and they kind of moved on to like the Iron Maiden stuff. And I'm like, these guys should have been bigger over here. So
uh,
what was it like
Everyone
touring
said
in
the same
Japan
thing.
and all that though?
Brilliant! Yeah, but I mean that didn't happen until 10 years later,
Yeah.
and that's how it came about, the Japanese thing, because Masa Ito, who's
Hmm.
the grand fromage of the rock world out there, he's a big rock DJ, has his own radio stations and TV shows and stuff like that. I think Paul Diano approached him about getting his band out there, Battle Zone, but he said, right, well, he said, why don't you do this instead? It's going to be the 10th anniversary of the New Wave British Heavy Metal. Yourselves, you're not an Iron Maiden anymore. You and Dennis Stratton, you get together with Praying Mantis
Ooh.
and bring this group over here, a super group, like a hybrid type thing,
Oh, that's how that
and
came about. Okay.
yeah, and it got us to, we got our toe in the water, and before we knew it, we were swimming.
And you've also worked with Clive Burr, correct, too?
Yeah, God rest his soul, man.
Mm,
Yeah,
one of the best as well.
yeah.
And
Lovely, lovely, lovely bloke, great
mm,
drama. Just a diamond, diamond guy.
and it's the sounds you
And
guys is the way that it seems like it's just like this big like when you hear music you can hear the love of the members and within making the music and it
yeah, and we
comes out
just
which
had
is amazing.
and, when you get on with each other,
Oh,
as
of
a
course.
as a unit, the music flows. It's just like you can see it. Yeah, as you can see, you can hear it. You can see it. You
Hmm.
can hear it.
And then you
Clive
guys
was
had
the
a
same.
10-year break from the first album and the second album, and then you had a band called Stratus in between. How did that all come about?
Well, it was we had bad management, to tell the truth.
Ah.
When throughout the Praying Mantis period, and they poured money into the wrong things. We signed with Arista, who weren't a rock label anyway. I don't know why we didn't sign with the same label as um, EMI, but there was a lot of sort of like crap going on there it was like political, between
Ah, jeez.
management and record companies and stuff like that. And we even had Peter Mensch approach us, who like had Def Leppard at the Rainbow when we played. We went to see Iron Maiden at the Rainbow, and he said to me, he said, "You guys," I think, yeah, we were supporting them. That's right, yeah. And Peter Mensch said to me, he said, "You guys get a singer, and I'll sign you tomorrow."
Wow.
And I went, wow. And but we thought, well, we've come this far, and we're doing okay, and let's just give it a bit more, give it a bit more of a shove, and but it didn't happen. And then Arista didn't take up the option on the second album. It didn't, it sort of died a death.
Hmm.
And I think, Praying Mantis was always on the edge of the new wave British heavy metal. We were more melodic than the rest of the troop,
Yeah.
and I think that's where we fell by the wayside. So they didn't take up the option, and I mean that whole thing with, as you were saying earlier, with All Day and All of the Night by the Kinks. Well, that was like an attempt to do a Van Halen, as they did with Girl. You
Yeah, I
really
see where
got
they
me.
took it and made it
Yeah, you
more
really got
metal.
me. Yeah, but that didn't happen, and yeah, it went by the wayside. And then we fell out with the management. We decided
Oh,
to
jeez.
to sack them, and then we got involved in this legal wrangle. Took about 3 years to sort out, and by this time the name had gone cold, and we missed the train really. Bus, ship, plane, the whole lot.
Ah, jeez.
I know it's crap, and people saying, everyone's been saying since, you guys should have been bigger. You should have been
Yeah, my
bigger.
dad's the same way, and so
A
am
lot of
I.
them
So am I.
say,
You really
I
should
mean, a
have.
lot of people would say
Yeah.
you write some better songs than Maiden. And I said, yeah, well, we gave them our guitar harmonies as well. They sort of like start picking up on that stuff. And
Yeah.
I'm not ashamed to say it. I love the guys. I love the guys so much. In Maiden, and
Yeah.
but it was difficult. It was down to management, their management, and our management, who were actually linked beforehand with a band called do you remember Cockney Rebel, Steve Harley and Cockney Rebel?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they were linked together there. And then when they heard about the new wave British heavy metal taking off, they decided to jump on that bandwagon, and here we are. Well, there we
Until this day.
were.
Yeah.
I know it's crap in it, but you know, yeah, I have my moments where I go, oh shit, you know, we just screwed up. Why did we do this? Why didn't we do that? Like it's always a big why, but there you go.
It's interesting. It's interesting, you know, it's always, at least you guys are still making music. That's the best part. You know,
Yeah,
still, I mean, it's
and we
not, you know.
haven't and we haven't given that. We didn't give up our day jobs until recently. I mean, I've
Ah.
retired. I thought, but you know, balls to that because that was the thing. You know, was, everyone. Chris had had a gig with a sort of engineering company. I was doing my own thing,
Oh,
building
wow.
furniture for people, building guitars and stuff like that. And you know, and then suddenly, you know, because you're really good at what you do, people you know, want you and they recommend you to someone else,
You
and
just
this
keep
took,
getting
you
forward.
know, yeah, and then suddenly the whole thing came about again with with the Japan thing, and that's how it was born again. So here we
Amazing.
are. But
There
yeah,
you go.
so we thought we've run the two things parallel, but I'd rather have taken one route and not the other, you know. But I knew because as brothers, Chris and myself, that was the name of Praying Mantis. We had to sort of keep it that way. And you know, once you get sort of families, you've got to pay the mortgage, you've got to put food on the table,
Of course.
and the way the music's been going with the whole sort of digital revolution, you know, that's it's not sort of money making anymore. It's not as easy to make money as it was in yesteryear. Mm,
As an artist
yeah,
myself, I
that's
definitely feel that it's, you know, I've been
right.
working on the power pop side of things, and I've been lucky enough to work with some really cool people like Terry Draper of Klaatu, and some really opportunities that have been amazing. And it's just, it's like, oh, this music is so good, and I'm not just saying it because it's my music or anything. It's just, it's good quality music, and
That's
it's
right.
tough to get out there.
And the
It's
great
tough.
thing, you know, that I mean, the digital thing has got its advantages and
Yeah,
disadvantages. I mean, like
exactly.
yesterday, I mean, you could write a song, do a
Hmm.
demo, and you like, this was brilliant, this song, and then you go into the studio and try and emulate that. You never got that feel ever again.
No, you don't. It's like
No,
you're stuck with the first. There's magic in the
that's
first
right.
takes.
Exactly, and that's what I loved about the stuff that
Yeah.
Frank Zappa used to do.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
like used to use old sort of hissy old tapes and stuff like that, and you go,
I
yeah.
love that.
Yeah, but nowadays it's great because I mean, you're demoing and you're recording at the same time. It's not a demo anymore. Oh, I'll
It's
use
really
that
like
bit.
you put
Yeah,
demo next to it, and it's like what's. It's really not. It's technically the first take, which is fun
yeah,
because I have my own little setup at home, which is wonderful. And you know, recently like seeing everybody else's setup, but I'm just content with what I got from my little parts here and there. And then I got a mixer guy in another state I've never met, who is actually the co-host of the show. He'll be on back on guys. He'll be back up. Sometimes he
all
takes
right. Yeah, yeah.
breaks.
You mentioned him
So
last week.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's the co-host, Tyler Green. Hello, Tyler.
Hello,
but
Tyler.
but you know, we had a couple things going on, so it's just me for this one. But it's very cool that we're able to have this opportunity. I think that's what brings with online, and we've talked about it with past guests too. I'm able to talk to you guys, you know, which is amazing. So I'll never take that for granted.
No, no, man. This is
Yeah,
great for me, you know, and
perfect.
it just like gives me a chance to spout off every now and again because I
Yeah,
mean
hell yeah.
it's been such a hiatus at the moment with the whole lockdown
I
thing,
know
you
it's
know, with the
crazy.
coronavirus. So
Yeah.
you know, I'm just like, oh, okay, I just welcome anyone.
Yeah, I know it was. That's
Bring it
why I
on.
didn't want to ask anyone, you know, of the time, but I'm like, yeah, but they're home now. Actually, they might want to because they're not able to express
That's
anywhere
right.
else what they want to talk about. So we
Yeah, I
started
mean,
up again. So
all
it
I've
was
been
perfect.
having is technical issues
I
recently. I'm like,
know.
oh man, what is it?
And then over here
I
trying to
just,
record this episode, and we had some technical issues in the beginning. So it's wonderful.
yeah,
It's
I
technology
know.
great.
It's great, but we get around them. We get around them. I was
Yeah.
going to say your profile pic on Facebook,
Hmm.
Jeremy Edmond. You look like Hammy, Hammy, Hammy the hamster. No, Sammy Hagar.
Oh, thank you.
There you go.
At
Look,
least I'm
look
not.
at the
I
phone.
can't drive 55. You know. Thank you. Thank you. Ah man. Next up, I'm just gonna ask a couple more questions left for the Jebb and Green side of this podcast, guys. As I mentioned in the beginning, we're gonna do two special shows. So at the end of this episode, we're gonna continue into. I'll basically say, hey, check the description below for a special episode with Tino, and that's gonna be asking him 5 songs. Then I'll play the 5 songs on the show, and then he'll explain the inspirations and writing behind them. But
Excellent.
for the next question I have here for you is we're gonna skip ahead a lot. I know it's gonna sound like we just skipped a bunch of albums, but I'm
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of Sanctuary. Sanctuary is one of my favorite Praying Mantis albums
It's a
out of
great
them.
album.
And I wanted to
I love,
ask, what was the whole process of that album? Like you got a new singer. You guys seem to have singers changing throughout too as well, which is
yeah,
is
we were
interesting.
our singers were the drummers of Spinal Tap.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny because usually it's either the bass player or the drummers, and now it's
Yeah,
the
that's
singers.
right. Well, again, I mean, this question's answered by by the fact that we didn't sort of keep on it. That we did an album with a Japanese lot, and then
Hmm.
we went back to our jobs and sort of carried on, and instead of sort of like keeping it going, trying to sort of take
Yeah,
it
it's
by the
time
balls
slipping
and the
away,
sort
right?
yeah, time slipping away indeed, yeah, and that's about four different versions of that song, if I
Yeah.
remember. But yeah, well, where was I? You got me. You took me right back then. So yeah, no, it's yeah, where were we? We were with Sanctuary. Yeah,
Yeah, Sanctuary. Yep, I went all the
Sanctuary,
way
and
back to Predator.
yeah, the time slipping away.
Yeah.
But yeah, Sanctuary was a great album. Like we didn't do anything for a while. The singers came and they went. They used
Hmm.
Praying Mantis as a stepping stone, which I don't blame them for. But um, in fact, a mate of mine, good friend of mine, Tom Jackson, who was originally a singer in Praying Mantis back in '82, something like that.
Ah,
Um, he lives in Basel in Switzerland. In fact, I'm going to go and see him when I can get on a flight again.
there you go.
He suggested, why don't you do a gig with all the previous singers of Praying Mantis?
Oh, that would be insane.
I know, totally, but we'd probably sort of do a 2 hour show with it
That'd be
quite
sweet.
easily. And anyways, that's by and by. So yeah, it's loads of singers, but when it came to Mike Freeland, and we had him for a while, nurtured him a little bit because I mean I used to play in a pub band called the Wandering Crutchleys, which
Ah.
which was a play on the Travelling Wilburys.
Ah, I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, and there was like a bunch of us that were playing in pub bands around the country and stuff like that. And then there was Andy Scott from the Sweet, and then we formed a band called the Wandering Crutchleys, and there was three guitarists at the time. Then Andy left about a year later to carry on with the Sweet,
Hmm.
and we carried on with that and saw Mike Freeland. I first met Mike Freeland, vocalist, with a band called the Sweet Shop Boys. That was it, and loved his voice and that. So in fact, Bruce Bisland, our drummer, when we went to Japan at the time, who's also in the Wandering Crutchley, said, why don't you get Mike in?" And we tried, so we tried him out, and yeah, we got going with that. And funny enough, Bruce Bisland joined the Suite, so he came out of Praying Mantis. So it was between
Ah.
drummers and singers. So it's a real sort of like cocktail of different recipes. Praying Mantis was at that time, and since then, I mean, funny enough, I mean, this is the most stable lineup we've ever had for the last two albums. In
Knock
fact,
on wood.
we're doing a third album for Legacy
Sweet.
and Gravity, and we're going to have something else for next
Cannot
year. But
wait.
yeah, no me. So busy writing at the moment, and I've got tons and tons of ideas.
Good that you're keeping busy. That's
So
awesome.
in fact, yeah, we've got a Zoom meeting together with the rest of the band tomorrow
Ooh.
evening to go through what we're up to and when we're going to get together and stuff like that. So yeah, planning for next year really, because I mean this year's out of the way now. I mean we lost so many gigs this year,
It's
and
crazy.
really good gigs. I mean it's crap because we like got such a momentum up. It's the tail end of last year and the early part of this year. I mean we're really building up momentum and really got the train rolling. But
And Gravity's a fantastic album, guys. It's
yeah,
highly
but then
suggest. Real good.
Gravity brought us back down to
Yeah.
ground.
Yeah, literally. It's
But
crazy.
yeah, so where were we? I diversed again.
Yeah, it's all right. We were talking about the
Digressed.
sanctuary.
Digressed.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sanctuary, and
All
yeah,
good.
great album, great album. We wrote this. Funny enough, because I was working on a house, I was doing a remold on a house that I was living in because I just split up with my wife, and I broke up, and I was doing this job for someone, like doing a remold on this house,
Hmm.
and I was living in it at the time. So what I did, I constructed the studio downstairs in in the front room while I was living there. I had 3 months in there to do the job, And what I did is converted the front room to the studio. So that's the last room I was going to refurbish. And in the upstairs, in the spare room, there was like one of the bedrooms upstairs was a small room. I converted it into a vocal booth. So we did all the majority of the recording well, all of the recording, in fact, apart from a few overdubs that we did in Atlanta. We came over because a good friend of mine, Andy Riley, I don't know if you've heard that name over there. He's a really good
Sounds
producer.
familiar.
Yeah, good, really check it out. Andy Riley, spelt Riley, Riley, as opposed to Rayleigh, I don't
Hmm.
know why. So or is it the other way around? I can't remember.
Google will
We
fix it,
call
but
him
we're right.
Riles. Anyway, we call him Riles. Yeah, he produced that album for us. He had a studio in Marietta, in Atlanta, Georgia. And so we went over there to mix it and finish off a few overdubs and stuff like that. We had a great time. We spent 3 weeks there, met a whole bunch of people, really had a great time. And we put that album to bed there. And it was great. And Riles did the second album, the one after that as well, Legacy.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, it's been like a running thing since. But we didn't use Riley last time. We used a guy in Belgium, who's a good friend of Hans, as our drummer, and it was closer to home. And because of budgets and everything, we had to look at the money we were getting because I mean
Hmm.
the days of the £50,000 or dollar budget was gone. Now it's like 8 grand if you're lucky. But
Times are
it's good.
changing.
Yeah, but it's good in a way because you don't. I mean, you start seeing return earlier. Obviously, you don't have to
Hmm.
pay the record company back, but that never happened anyway. We never recouped, so we were laughing, all the way to the bank when they gave us these huge advances. But now that's no more. But at least we're getting royalties now, which is a good thing. And yeah, great album. I mean, we have wrote it all over here. Lots of it came from jamming, mistakes, and things like that. And but it was great. And that whole stint in the States, it was brilliant. Lock away. It was locked down in a studio, surrounded by trees, ferns.
Ooh.
Yeah. In fact, our biggest highlight of that experience was going to the local Walmart, 3 miles up the road, and like, woman, woman.
They exist. They do exist.
Yeah. No, it was brilliant.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, great fun.
All right, sweet. So, Tino, thank you for coming on the Jebb and Green portion of this podcast. Guys, check down a link below. There's a continued extended part of this, which we're going to be recording right
Wow,
now.
I'm on